All right, I'm here today in Morehead City at the old Morehead City Elementary School. Back in my day, this is an elementary school. It's run down. They've moved the elementary school out to where Camp Glen was. Now Camp Glen is now Morehead Elementary. This was a thriving elementary school back in the 70s, late 70s, 80s. Now the Morehead City Police Department does things. This used to be just fields. There were a couple of buildings here where we did like extra stuff, but mostly it was fields, played football and all that stuff here. My classroom, Mr. Jones, this is my first experience in a public school after my first 3 years being in a Christian school. Moved to Morehead City. It was very much like Mayberry, you might think of today. We came here 4th grade. I think my class was right in here. It was one of these two classes up in here. And Mr. Jones was from Boston, Massachusetts, had a good Boston accent, and it was quite a year of change for me, moving from one state to another, as well as from a Christian school to a public school. And one of the stories from this age, this class, Mr. Jones would obviously take roll every morning, and during that time he would ask us about our lunch situation. Growing up, I always took my lunch to school at the Christian school. My mom would pack it every day. I would just take it. Moved here, same deal. Although here they would sell little cartons of milk, so we would buy the milk. But I would continue to bring my lunch box to school with me with my lunch. Well, first little bit of school, he would ask who has paid lunch, who has what do they call it? Discount lunch or partial lunch? What do they call that? Reduced. So some kids would pay full price for their lunch and get a lunch here. Some kids would pay reduced price for their lunch, and other kids would get free lunch. So every morning he would ask, okay, who's got paid lunch? And some kids would raise their hands. He would say, who has reduced lunch? And some other kids would raise their hand. And he would say, who has free lunch? And other kids would raise their hand. And I would raise my hand on free lunch. I didn't know the system. I really didn't. I wasn't trying to work the system. I wasn't trying to play the system. Here was the system for me. I didn't pay for my lunch. My lunch to me was free. So when he asked who got free lunch, I'd be like, I got a free lunch because I didn't pay nothing for it. And so the first several days, he would get these extra lunches. Here's what would happen. Where the police department building is now, that actually used to be our cafeteria. I'm sure they did other things in there as well. But we would walk from here, a couple of guys every day. It was kind of fun because you got out of your classes. We would walk down this whole building, go down the stairs, go across outside, go into that building over there, and pick up this, it was like a big cooler basically. It was probably, it seemed like 2 coolers at the time, but it was probably just like a good sized ice chest now. And that would be full of the hot lunches that we'd bring it all the way back from that building, carry it, 2 guys, we'd carry it all the way back up to here, into our classroom. And of course, along the way, some guys you get bored, I guess. So you'd be carrying it and you'd be kind of swinging it, and we would do a little scientific test, and sometimes they would take and they would swing that thing all the way upside down and around, and it would most of the time just stay together. But you get your lunch sometimes and it was not really all together. Anyway, it was really actually all together. It was all mixed up because you knew the guys had done that. But anyway, back to the story about the lunches. Mr. Jones, he would count it off. We'd always have an extra lunch for the first several days, even a couple weeks of school. We had extra lunch coming back in that container. And so he would say, who ordered lunch and didn't get it? And nobody raised their hand. And there I sit I'm sitting there eating my lunchbox lunch that my mom fixed for me. Everybody else is eating. So now he says, I got an extra lunch. They keep sending us an extra lunch. Who wants it? And of course I'd be like, I'll take it. So eventually he asked one morning, and he asked who gets free lunch. I raised my hand, and he sees my lunchbox sitting right there. He goes, Dave. He always called me Dave. He was the first person in my life to call me Dave. He goes, Dave. And with his Boston accent, you got your lunch with you? I'm like, yes, sir. Well, why are you trying to order a free lunch? I said, I'm not trying to order a free lunch. I've got my free lunch right here. And so he looked at me and he had to explain to me the idea of free lunch, reduced lunch, and paid lunch, full lunch. More than a little embarrassing at the time. And so that was the end of my getting extra food days as well. But anyway, funny little story. It's sad to see my school kind of run down like this. Before it was the elementary school back in the 50s, 60s, it would have been Morehead City High School, which now became, back in 1969-ish, became West Carteret High School. So anyway, there you go. They say there are no free lunches. There are free lunches until they figure out your system. Y'all have a good one.